Hi, everybody. Welcome to our very first Phil Factor interview with our very own Phil team. And my name is Kim Fuller. I'm founder and CEO of Phil. And I have with me Alaina Pert, who is a wonderful teammate of mine. Hi, Alaina.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
Good, thanks.
I'm Alaina Pert. I'm the content strategist here at Phil. And basically, I come up with some interesting words to make more impact for your organization. So I love talking about annual reports.
Yes, we're excited to cover this really hot topic. And the reason we're covering it today is because we've seen time and time again that the traffic on our blog, this is one of the most trafficked articles on our website. People are constantly looking for how to do a successful annual report. So we're hoping to share some insights with you today, and we're going to get going with some questions for Alaina. So Alaina, we really want to know, why are annual reports such a pain for nonprofits?
Well, I mean, for the longest time, annual reports have always been about due diligence, right? It's something you had to do. And I think one of the biggest issues for nonprofit organizations is not really having a clear strategy for their annual report. Moving it from something that they've had to do to being something that could bring a lot of advantages to the organization, because it becomes a fundraising vehicle that you could use to really influence the key stakeholders that can make the difference for your organization. So I think that that's really the issue, is not having that clear strategy about what's the purpose of this new communications vehicle that you're going to be creating this year. And then obviously, if you don't have the staff available to sort of do that whole thought process and think about it, the annual report in a kind of creative way, that could be definitely an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, the good thing is that if you hire a professional that could help with coming up with a theme and keeping the creative content cohesive and interesting, then you could be, already on the path of a positive annual report.
Yeah, and I also find that a lot of times, like the nonprofits, the old annual reports were so dry and so functional in terms of financial data and programming, updates and things like that, that people saw it as a chore that they had to do this. And like you said, it's an amazing marketing vehicle that, you can put this in front of potential funders, you can put it in front of, we're seeing so many organizations struggle with retention and recruitment of staff right now, right? So this is a great vehicle for you to even, put out with, your job offer to say, hey, this is the kind of organization that you'll be joining. These are all the great things that we've done over the last year, so there's so many new ways to use your annual report. You're putting so much time and effort into it. Let's try to get the most mileage out of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to also think beyond just graphic design, right? Like, it's not just about how things are going to look, but really taking advantage of, all of the strategic communications and the direction that could go behind, producing this type of communications vehicle. So I think that's something that often gets underestimated, like the value of a team that could really like do a 360, and be able to look at your report with fresh eyes and give a direction that'll actually give you impact.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we just mentioned a minute ago was working with an external partner. What kind of advice do you have for a nonprofit or a charity who's going to be working with an external partner like Phil for the first time? What should they need to know about the process? What should they prepare for?
I mean, you really have to go into the whole process of finding an external partner with clear expectations. You really need to know what it is that you want and be realistic about the budget that you have to spend, because obviously you can be producing, something bare bones or something, magazine quality. So it depends on what it is that you want to create and how that reflects your organization. You need to be very clear right away what are the out-of-pocket expenses and what are the ones that are included in the price that you're getting. A lot of the times organizations might not realize that what's being proposed is fantastic, but once you get to the printer, it's quite a lot more expensive than they might have anticipated. And if that is not included in your price, then,
yeah,
it'll be in for a surprise.
price of photography, price of doing extra graphic work, or even doing a custom photo shoot. If the art director comes up with all these great ideas, that's one thing, but actually executing on those creative ideas is another. And so you really want to make sure that you're not going to have surprises by falling in love with a concept that then might be cost prohibitive to actually, execute. So that's something definitely to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that we're seeing now is, like you were saying before, that dry kind of financial data being presented as an infographic, and creating these custom infographics take time and a lot of skill to make them come out right. And sometimes, when it's being proposed initially, is that an add-on or is that included? And does that include translation and things like that also, so those are definitely things to take into consideration before finding the right person to work with your team.
Yeah, and it helps teams like ours when clients come prepared with some of those answers right away. And if not, we will prompt them with, how many languages are we doing this? And how many pages do you think, this document should be? And if you're printing it, then it needs to be a multiple of 4 because that's how printing works, and so on and so forth. So there's all these things that, the partner that you pair up with can help guide you, but you need to have some of those answers on the outset just to help the quotation process of it and the budgeting process of it at the very beginning. That's great.
And the other issue is to think about is also, when you think about an annual report, you think about the what that you're creating, but the how you're going to create it is just as important. And so you need to be able to agree from the onset on the milestones and deadlines, communication between the outside firm and your firm. How is that going to be done? Decision making. A lot of these things are often overlooked when working with a new organization. So that's something that you want to also keep in mind.
Yeah, and the timing of, I know that one of the things that slows us down is the approval processes, right? So when are you scheduling those milestones where it's up to the client to proofread everything, double check everything, or provide certain bits of information? You want to be timing that out so it's not bottlenecking with 10 other priorities that you have, coming down that week. And so proper planning is definitely key to keep everybody's sanity intact. Great. So I just wanted to maybe ask one last question, which is, are you witnessing any kind of trends in today's successful annual reports? What's really standing out to you?
Well, I mean, really, what we're hearing about now is all about good storytelling, because the attention span of the average reader has become smaller and smaller. And so the stories need to be able to reach the reader in a more emotional and direct way. And there's nothing more vivid that stays in the memory of somebody than a good story. So really, one of the interesting things that we're seeing is that there's less discussion about the us as an organization and more discussion about, or stories about, who is receiving the services that your organization is serving. And that sometimes puts traditional content on its head, because we're so used to hearing organizations saying, well, I have to prove my impact as an organization. But really what you want to do is think about, how can you show the impact that you've had on the lives of people? Because those are the human stories that will resonate long after that annual report gets put down on a coffee table someplace, or the website gets closed. And sometimes what we're seeing now is that these human stories actually make really interesting impact in people's decision making, because they're also great stories to tell visually. So that's one thing for sure that we're seeing.
And what about the level of transparency, and showing that you're being responsible with the money that you're managing? The financials are still, now we've got them in pretty pie charts, and we've, gone are the days of like those detailed assets and complicated tables, but people are trying to show their management of the money in new and creative ways. But I think it's still important to show concretely how the money is being spent, right?
Yeah, and for the longest time, it was always a focus on, this really small kind of expenses going on administrative costs, and this large expense going um, um, on programmatic expenses.
Yeah.
But I think that the onus is on you as an organization to be honest and upfront about the challenges that you faced, and sometimes those challenges are not so easily chopped up and divided into pie charts. And it's worth the time and space in an annual report to talk about how, no strings attached funding makes a difference in an organization, and not to focus so much on this administrative costs and being lean and efficient, and continuing a model of kind of scarcity and constantly, funding programs instead of thinking of the organization as a whole. And this is really an opportunity in those pages to talk about the financial realities and be really upfront with the impact that that you're creating as an organization that goes beyond just the program of the day.
So it sounds like a lot goes into an annual report, and storytelling can get quite lengthy. How do you keep it short?
Well, that's some brave editing. And, sometimes having the eyes of another person that's not so close to your organization really helps, because, the proofreading that goes through an annual report to make it really tight and good copy to read, it often can't be done internally because you're too close to the material.
Too close to it, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's like a value that is often underestimated in having an outside team take care of the annual report for you, is that, there's a perspective that's valuable,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and that can provide, some honest kind of feedback on where you can cut and how can you make it tighter, and just keep your eye on the end game, which is what's the ultimate purpose of this annual report. It's to inform, it's to influence, and it's to really get to the heartstrings of the people who care about your organization.
Yeah, and you don't have to report on what happened over the last 20 years. You really just want to be talking about what's relevant to the most, you know, immediate financial period that you're reporting on to. So I know
Yeah.
that we often have to remind our clients to keep it short and not tell their whole life story, but try to, maybe say, hey, if you want to know more about our mission and our vision and everything, go to our website, and you can add prompts in an annual report that can bring people online to more information. You don't have to necessarily pack everything into the report itself.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes to the idea that the annual report does not have to sit inside of a PDF, right? Like there's really opportunities to use the digital tools that are out there to make that annual report more flexible, more interesting, more bite size. And that means that, a microsite is really interesting, and, embedding different video clips instead of that traditional letter from the board of directors. How interesting would it be to see the actual board of directors talk passionately about an organization, like with their face, so like how we're doing right now, talking about annual reports.
Yeah, you can tell we're excited about it, for sure, for sure. That's great. So I think in closing, I'll just say that, because we know that annual reports can, cost thousands of dollars, dozens of hours from your staff and leadership team. You really want to get the most out of it. And once you've created your annual report, you want to think about how to repurpose the content into other pieces, like donor proposals, social media posts, articles that can be on your blog. You want to make the document available for download on your website and share it widely with your stakeholders and future donors. So we wanted to keep it brief today. Thank you so much for joining us on this Fill Factor. Leave us your thought and your feedback in the comments, and visit fill.ca for more information and sign up for the Fill Factor newsletter. Thanks for being with us today.